Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly and I'm a mixed media artist that specializes in gouache paint and ink work, and sometimes I do digital painting. This week's video is going to be another part to this possum painting I'm doing. I'm doing a whole series of paintings of trash animals that are adorable with mushrooms and with their third eyes open, you know? So if you'd like to see any previous videos I've uploaded about the process of those paintings, like for the raccoon one, you can check that out here at the link to that playlist. Today's video, I'll just be explaining the process as I'm getting more into the details stage of this possum, and next week's video will be going over how I create the detail work on the mushrooms. So right now I'm using a lot more gouache because we are building up the details. We got a good layer going. We already established the underpainting in the last video. I'm doing a lot more detail work on the mouth. I thought that area was making me a little nervous just because it's so small. Look at the size of my nails and my tiny brush compared to like the painting area I'm working on. Yeah. Also, the total surface size of this painting is 8 inches by 10 inches. I first established where the darkest dark shadows are going to be in the mouth, which is the sides and the very back of the tongue. I'm also doing the same for the nose because it's in the same general area, and I figured I might as well block out where the nostrils are going to go. I then proceeded to add any warmer toned reds to the possum tongue, and looking at the inside of a possum mouth is just, you know, something you don't really think about. They scream a lot, so you'd think you'd know what the inside of a possum mouth looks like, but they have a lot more teeth than you would expect. And if you see those two white lines that are going to the sides of the tongue in the possum mouth, that's because they have a lot of teeth. They have a weird amount of teeth. They're like shark rodents, you know, but they're cute, so it's fine. I just did a straight line of a off-colored, like beige white, just to block out the general area where I guess the molars are going. I'm not sure if that's what they're called. And of course I have the pointy vampire teeth that the possum has in the very front of its mouth. I also blocked out where the general highlight is going to go on its tongue, as well as its little lips. I did the same thing for the nose. A possum's nose is really funny looking and cute. And also, while I did that, I also decided to add some white texture to the fur, and I'll explain that more later because I end up doing a lot of layers for the fur because I mess up on it a lot. Anyways, that was a side note. The possum nose. Okay, so they have such an odd shaped nose, but it's cute. It's just, I don't know, it's like a mixture of a mouse and a raccoon, and they have this shape to it that's kind of like the raccoon's nose, but it's, I don't know, the way it's shaped is very different. The very bottom of it tends to be larger, like more bulbous, and you can see more definition of the nose where it meets the mouth, and it creates a crease in the center of the nose. The nostrils on the side also flare out quite a bit like a raccoon's nose, not so much like a dog's nose, and it's very smooth. It looks very smooth and cute and boopable. Also very pink and adorable. I love possums. Since the light source is coming mainly from the third eye that I have whited out on the forehead, I have a really good highlight at the very top of the possum's nose, where it will be reflecting back that light. In the next video, maybe in the next couple weeks, when I actually start with the third eye and creating a whole glowing effect, I'll show you guys how I get that orange glow to reflect off of other areas of the painting, kind of like I did for the raccoon painting. If you would like to see how I did that now, you can just click this link here. Okay, so let's get down to business. We are making the fur more realistic looking. So for starters, in the last video, I added a lot of blue where there's going to be shadows, a lot more orange or beige where there's going to be some of that third eye light hitting the possum's arms or belly. And I also added a lot of pink, not just to the tail, but there was a lot of pink skin around the fingers as well as its little belly. And right now, over that layer of undertones I already established, I am adding a layer of darker bristly fur. Around the backs of the legs and arms, and definitely on the paws, possums have a lot more darker fur. They also have darker fur along their back, and they sometimes have this cute dark gray heart-shaped face framing quality to their fur. I don't know how else to describe it. I'll just put a picture here for reference. So what I did is I got burnt umber watercolor pencil and I just sketched that out along with the direction the fur is growing. I created some more fur around those areas where they're gonna have darker fur, and then I went in with a smaller detailed brush that's very damp, not wet but damp, and I just flicked that out to create little fur strokes. I then went back in with gouache paint and I am revisiting where there's highlights and anywhere where that fur that is darker would catch the light on one side of each fur strand, if that makes sense. Specifically with the arms, I wanted the foreshortening to not flatten the arms into just little ovals. I want it to look like his little arms are reaching out, but they're very fluffy and kind of round looking because of how much fur there is. So in order to do that without flattening a structure, you need to think of it as if it's a cylinder that's coming towards you, and with the light coming down at it and with fur coming out of the object, it would curve around the arm, and some of the fur that goes down the sides of the arm would still catch some of that light. It wouldn't be as light, but it would still catch some of it due to the angle it's at. I'll put a diagram here to better explain what I'm talking about. I tend to learn with visuals a little bit better, so hopefully this helps any of you out there. I am also adding more white fur as some texture and layers to the tummy and also its little legs. With the legs, I really want to make a note, and as well as other parts of the possum, but I think the left leg you can see what I'm talking about a bit better. I wanted to create layers of clumps of fur. I'll include a diagram showing what I'm talking about as well. But basically, the fur and the direction it's growing versus the lighting. There's naturally going to be fur that clumps together more, and you can see this a lot in... I always think the best example is if you look at a Pomeranian and they had the floofy neck, you can really see groups of fur that naturally clump together with how the body moves, and it creates a little shelf shadow kind of. And on a very subtle level, it does that on other areas of animal bodies too, depending on what type of fur they have and the lighting and whatnot. Naturally, clumps of fur are going to gather together and create a layered look. And those clumps of fur are going to capture a shadow underneath it. So it's going to look almost like it's stacked. Oh no, we're getting to the really difficult part. Okay, so I wound up adding way too much white, I realize, to the face. And I also made the snout of the possum too wide. That was a very easy fix. I end up fixing it even more later on. But basically what I did was I realized the side of the possum's face needed more shadow, and I also made it a little too fluffy. I think I got a little too worked up about the fur, you know what I mean? So I added a drop shadow around the sides of the nose, and I also added those little hair whisker follicles to the side of the snout as well. The possum eyes. Okay, I did make them lighter than they normally look in photos, but what I did was I basically blacked them out, added a small ring of orange where the iris would naturally capture light, and then I added a very thin line of white for the whites of the eyes because possums half the time look like they're cross-eyed. Just a personal touch, but every time I do a third eye, I really like making the whites of the eyes look a little bit more irritated for some reason, so I used a red or pink color as the base coat for the whites of the eyes. I blacked out where the iris is going to be, and I also included an orange ring around where the iris would naturally catch some light and show some more color. Of course, I kept it black where there's going to be a pupil on all three eyes. In the possum's eyes, where the light would be closest to the third eye, I did add a little bit of a really sharp highlight right there to really show that the light source is the third eye for the most part. I wanted to make the eyes of the possum look like they're glowing a little bit more from that light being radiated out of the third eye, so I did add a lot more orange and a lot more saturation to the possum eyes. I also lined the waterline of the third eye with red, and I made a white gradient on the whites of the eyes, keeping the corners slowly becoming more red. I do have the third eye a lot more light and bright looking because it's going to be emitting a beam of light later on. So I mentioned earlier that heart-shaped face some possums have, where they have almost like a widow's peak of gray fur around their face. So right here I'm adding a bit more of that with some more of that burnt umber watercolor pencil, and I'm using a damp detailed brush to blend that out. Later on I crisp up those edges a bit more with white gouache paint just to enhance the highlights on that fur and make the edges a little bit more pronounced. This is the part where I did all this work and I realized, you know what, I think I might just have to start over, not start over entirely, but I don't like how the fur around the face looks. It looks a little too long and bristly. It doesn't look fine enough, I don't know. And I think I definitely added way too much detail without enough shadow and form to the face, so it looks kind of flat and fluffy and just white. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted there to be more of a possum shape to the face. So what I wound up doing was blending it all together. So that's neat, but it worked. I mean, it worked. As you could see, there's a lot more shadows around the side of the face. I kept a lot more highlights around the eyes, and then I really tried keeping that taupey shadow color, and I really tried my best not to overdo it with the details on the fur around the face. I think that less is more, and I really tried sticking to just creating groups of fur rather than over detailing too many pieces of fur to the point where it just looks like noise on a TV screen with no form underneath it. You know what I mean? Then I added the whiskers, and that is it for the possum. Next week I'll have a video showing you guys how I accomplished the mushrooms. Here is what the possum looks like. I'm naming her Darla. Just feels right. Anyways, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!